Namaskar. Welcome to episode 152 of Daily Global Insights with Sri and Sri. Today is Thursday, the 29th of April 2021. We have a lot to cover today, but we start off with the United States State Department advisory to all its citizens who are living in India to leave India because the COVID situation is going out of control. From what little we know, I'm going to read the US travel advisory verbatim. Access to medical care is severely limited due to COVID 19 cases. US citizens wishing to depart should use available commercial options now. Daily direct flights to the US and flights via Paris and Frankfurt are available. So, a lot of people are asking questions now, how do I do this? How do I do that? And so on. Sir, your initial thoughts on this?
I think my initial thoughts is typically when you have a pandemic of this pandemic impact of this magnitude, United States is adopting a very similar policy which most of the nations have adopted. I mean, this is no different to what Europe did. This is no different to what's prevalent in many parts of Asia. This is no different to what United States itself applied, which is to say that there is a major spread of the COVID wave 2 as a result of this new virus that is going around India, which seems to be rapidly, has the ability to spread rapidly. And United States has also, is also making its efforts to send what is called as the oxygen supplies, which is the inadequate oxygen supplies, which is warranted by people around. Most of the diplomatic enclaves, since either it is in New Delhi or Bombay or Mumbai, which is in Maharashtra, both these places are quite adversely affected relative to rest of the country. I mean, you have 6 states which make up, or 6 or 7 states. We have given all these data to you when we talked about the 12 states and the other 15 union territories and states. We've given all these data. So it is no surprise that they have issued a warning advisory, to both U.S. citizens.
So, to your point that in Maharashtra, it's actually Pune, then Nagpur, and then Mumbai in that order in terms of the severity of the second wave. But it's all within the state of Maharashtra. Maharashtra has been badly affected by this double mutating virus. The good news is that Bharat Biotech vaccine appears to be effective. Even Fauci has confirmed this. And in fact, he has gone ahead and said that this is the only vaccine that seems to be effective against the double mutant version of the virus. Some call it the 617. I don't know exactly the number. I don't want to get it wrong. But you all know what the double mutant virus is. That is the cause for the recent uptick in cases in Maharashtra. In Delhi, it is rumored that it is the UK strain that has found its way, and this could be attributed to the farmer agitation, some of whom are still lingering around, some of whom are still blocking traffic, preventing critical supplies from reaching hospitals. I think at some point, whoever is protesting needs to take a call. What is good for them? What is good for the country? And in other Indian news, PM Cares Fund government to acquire 100,000 portable government concentrators and build 500 oxygen plants. Government accords organic certification to more than 14,000 hectares in Andaman and Nicobar. So you want to touch upon this? What is the reason for this?
Well, I think they're developing Andaman Nicobar, which was neglected, so they're developing on 3 fronts. It used to be only the naval base. There used to be very sporadic population. Never over a period of time, it's just a leisure island. Barring that, nothing was done to develop the ecosystem within the country. So it's very rich, fertile area. So it's obvious that the organic certification makes it very, very compelling in terms of the utilization and the usability of the various produce that comes out of it. The recognition of allocation of this land also means that the agro farming is being developed in that part. I mean, they're also build not only the agro, they're building logistics, storage. There's a fair amount of things that are being built to make sure. You remember that China has been also casting aspersions on this specific island. So the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So I think it's all augurs well as to why Indian government has chosen both a civil as well as a military approach in terms of addressing the specific part of the country.
And in other news, light combat aircraft Tejas adds fifth generation Israeli air-to-air missile Python 5 to its weapon package, and the Indian Air Force is going to lease six mid-air refueling aircraft from France to improve combat capabilities, range of fighter jets. And Army Chief visits Eastern Ladakh just days after China refuses to disengage at Gogra. And I might as well add that there are reports that Chinese tanks are getting mobilized in the eastern Gosthana region, also known as Aksai-Chin. We will try to continue to refer to this as Gosthana, which is how it used to be called before the Chinese occupation. So, your thoughts?
Now, my thoughts are that we have consistently maintained that the Himalayan region is going to spurt up, and it's not going to go away. And they will use every available opportunity from the north to the south, Akshay Chin to the Arunachal Pradesh region. They will try and use every single opportunity to see how they can leverage. That has been the Chinese approach. What is most amazing that the world has not asked the question, this COVID virus, which has originated from Wuhan, seems to have no mutations, no recursions, it seems to have absolutely no variants, nothing. It all seems to be seamless in China, whereas countries like India, countries like Japan, even in some of the Southeast Asian countries are seeing the spurt. We have seen fourth wave in Europe. We have seen mild second wave in United States. And so therefore, that the defense and the strategic border areas of India has always been under the Chinese threat, and they have been building infrastructure. Again, through our DGI, we have consistently reported India has not taken the eye of their border situation. Besides the negotiation and the disengagement process, it has continuously been building its capabilities to combat any Chinese aspersions in this region. The fact that the France is standing behind India, if you recall, under President Trump and Mike Pompeo, you would have heard a lot of statements come out from US in reinforcing and then making very prolific statements around the Chinese aspersions. And it was under Trump, if you recall, that Trump and Mike Pompeo, we signed the BEX agreement, which is bilateral exchange for communication services, which is effectively India has access to satellite imagery of the Chinese movements. So there is a very profound change as we transition. And the two countries which is standing with India around that region is Israel and France. France and Israel are standing shoulder by shoulder to provide any type of support that India requires, besides the augmentation of Indian capabilities within its own manufacturing. I mean, India is not standing still. It has built infrastructure, it has built roads, it is also manufacturing light tanks, it has enhanced its supplies, it has got augmented now fleet of Rafale planes making rounds in those skies. So what you are witnessing is both defensive and offensive type of capabilities while the negotiation goes on. Even the chief of armed forces, also visited. I think a couple of days ago or 3 days ago, he visited the Ladakh region, especially after the army chief, the disengagement of the Chinese.
Sir, we have a little bit of lighting difficulties on your end. It's going off and on, off and on. It gets dull and bright, dull and bright, dull and bright. So I would request you just to see if you can add any more lights to your side, sir. But I'll continue with the US news now. Now, yesterday, Biden addressed Congress last night at 8 p.m. The focus was on his agenda, America Family Plan, that follows the American Jobs Plan. Sir, the numbers that are being touted out, America is trotting out plan after plan like there is no tomorrow. And now, what was expected to be 5 trillion for the recovering from COVID now looks like it is going to go upwards of 10 trillion. what is going on? This is uncontrolled expenditure. I did not have the chance to see the speech. What are your impressions about the speech, sir?
I think my impressions, I watched almost all of the speech, barring the last maybe 3-4 minutes. The speech was a speech which reiterated the progressive agenda and the rationale for the progressive agenda and all his accomplishments in the first 99 days. It was on the eve of the 100th day, first 99 days. So he talked about the latest being from rescue plan to jobs plan to the American family plan, which is about $1.8 trillion, which started from $1 trillion to $1.8 trillion. So he spoke about each of the specific plans. He re-emphasized, maybe this is a political rhetoric which suits his progressives, which is to say, United States was built it needs to be built from ground up, and it cannot be built from top down. And even he took a swipe at Wall Street, which is to say Wall Street did not build America. It is basically trickle effect that is coming from the bottom segment of the population. And so therefore, I think whether you like it, accept it or not, that's his policy. He is elected president. He outlined the policies, and he also outlined what is to come, which is around climate accord and so on and so forth. So it was very sparsely attended. It was not, full. I saw definitely Mitt Romney. I don't believe I saw much of the membership of the Republican Party. Perhaps they were, because the TV cameras was not focusing. They clearly focused on Mr. Romney, who was present. And of course, the vice president was present as well. So Madam Harris has been given additional responsibility besides the border, which is around the climate side. So you're going to see more and more of his these aspects being coming out, the progressive agenda being coming out. With regard to this $10 trillion, these numbers are astronomical, and their only funding model seems to be, for example, this $1.8 trillion, Biden's proposal is to fund by higher taxes from the wealthy. Whether they really can find these numbers that they're looking for remains to be seen. He also announced, not in his speech, but outside the speech, those who are in the $400,000 salary category are exempted. The moment you bring that cap above $400,000, the relative size of the universe that you're talking about, quite dramatically reduces. So you can imagine how much of those people, the people in the higher bracket, need to pay by way of taxes to accommodate this. And finally, my point is that he said, the jobs plan, created zillions, can potentially get millions of jobs. You recall the guffey and the flip-flop that happened when actually jobs are going to be lost, and the independent tax fund or independent authorities have validated that there could be net loss of 189,000 jobs rather than millions of jobs that Biden is touting. So it was more like an election rhetoric, and these numbers that you are alluding to are astronomical. They're just going to roll. It's like what you call open-ended or a bottomless pit. You're going to draw more and more and more. It's like an addiction. You borrow, then you borrow more, and you borrow more, and you borrow more. That's where we are heading.
And in related news, Stephen Miller and top aides are suing the Biden administration, claiming discrimination against the white farmers. Sir, can you expand on this a little bit? Who is Stephen Miller and what is his activism?
Stephen Miller is the former advisor to President Trump. So some of the ex-Trump administration officials and members of the GOP, if you recall, as part of the 1.9, which became a $2 trillion, the rescue plan, which came at the tail end in December, as we transitioned from December to January, that specific plan had components where there was loan waivers granted to the farmers who were aggrieved as a result of the economic conditions and interest rates and so on. If you recall again, there we had indicated some of the white farmers were neglected, and this benefit was only given to non-white farmers, and the benefits of these loans either being waived or repackaged ranged up to 125%. We at that point of time reported that this is likely to come up sooner than later. It may be coming up in courts more than coming up in the House and the Senate chambers. That's what is happening. So they're going to sue, which is to say that you are applying a discriminatory practice between two specific segments of the community for the same issue.
And Buttigieg says that Biden still prefers a bipartisan infrastructure plan. So I guess there is some rethink on part of the Democrats as to they wanting to take the Republicans along in the 1.8 trillion infrastructure plan, sir.
Well, I think Manchin has been one of the big bottlenecks, and I think there are some people within Democratic Party who are going along with it. The Republican proposal ranges from 560, 580 to 620 billion dollars. We outlined the components of that proposal in one of the DGI shows, which is very specifically around transportation, transit, airports, and the internet infrastructure. They cut out all the other charge which is around doles and local administration, etc., etc. So you find that there is still Biden is trying to get this plan done, and Buttigieg is reaching out to people to say, hey, can you guys work with us to make it happen? That's what is going on. I don't think it is sold as yet, but they're working their way through.
And in other news, GOP reps push back on the critical race theory proposal. Bill banning critical race theory heads to Idaho governor's desk, and Biden racial equity agenda targets exclusionary single-family zoning in suburbs. If I understand this correctly, what it means is that Biden intends to have new buildings constructed right in the middle of boroughs, or that's how I see it, sir. What are your thoughts?
So what the proposal envisions, which is come up, is there are certain neighborhoods which has dominant, exclusive, or concentrated white communities, and his objective is to build these tall rise single family buildings in the middle of those neighborhoods so that there is much more harmonious integration of various communities is his theme. But if you are a politician, they're saying communal harmony comes from communities forming neighborhoods and villages, or neighborhoods and counties, based on your profile, based on your preferences, choices, and various other attributes. But they want to force fit and change the composition of the community structure. Whether this is rezoning for the purpose of political or whether it genuinely achieves certain objectives, we don't know. It seems to fit with this whole racial theory and racial equality theory agenda, which is going to the schools. We talked about the 1619 project. You should read the document. We don't have the time here to read the document, but we'll try to put up the document. It's quite astonishing what the components of what this racial theory proposal and the documentation is, which they're going to espouse to school children as part of the academic curriculum, whether you like it, accept it or not. This is some of the pushback that's come back from the red states, which is to say the whole thing is being conducted to bring this communism or socialism into the school system and catch the children young in terms of advocating the theory, whether the parents accept it or not.
Viewers, I am struck by the methods that the Democrats are using here, because I tell you what, I wrote a similar plan that was done by the Congress government, UPA government, about 12, 13 years ago. In India, they just tried a slightly different tack. They resettled the Rohingyas in strategic places where they could have a problem of demographic mismatch. I remember President Obama ranting about gerrymandering in one of his White House speeches. And I think a lot of this that you're seeing now is another way of doing what I described in my fictional book, Who Painted My Money White? Because there, the then government tried to enrich one section of the community, and now Kerala is sitting on a tinder box. And you know what? America is a much larger country, but the plan, the playbook seems to be taken straight out of the script that the UPA had employed in India. You can distinctly see these parallels. India, the Congress-led coalition. In the United Kingdom, the British Labour Party. And in the United States, the Democrats. They're all different in name only, DINO. So the next point, sir, is Senate Democrats pressure Biden to lift the refugee admission limits to 125,000. And President Biden will nominate Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez as the director of ICE. And as sheriff in 2017, he ended the Texas County participation in 287G program and deportation process with the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Sir, your thoughts on this selection? Also, I think it just reinforces what I just talked about in my book, sir.
Exactly. I think that you couldn't have said it better. If you are an Indian National Congress member and if you also happen to be a Democrat, that there is a very close alignment on the two policies. If one has seen India, the social policies of India did not work, has not worked. For the first $1 trillion GDP, India took almost close to 60 years to reach its first $1 trillion of GDP. Similarly, if you look at the per capita of the aggrieved communities, progressives to progressive agenda has only pushed them back in terms of the per capita. We'll give the data in one of the DGA sessions. So what you are alluding to makes plausible sense in terms of the playbook that is being played out in United States. With regard to this, the selection of the county sheriff, it's almost like if you are a Republican and have a specific policy, you're going to be thrown out. I'm going to have an exactly opposite guy. This Ed Gonzalez stopped cooperating, where if you find an illegal alien, then the program warranted the police to hand over to ICE. That's the 287G program. So he then initially was cooperative, but subsequently he did not. So many of these illegal migrants found in in the Texas County were let go, and now he is going to be the head of ICE. So therefore, you can imagine what the consequence of this particular decision is. They are going to make, just like defund police, it's going to be deactivate ICE. Deactivation of IC has already started. If you remember, they even issued a circular. You cannot call them aliens. You cannot call them illegal aliens. You should be compassionate. You should allow them to come in and move. So this is a formal official communication which has come from the government. So I think, as you said, more and more decisions which basically shakes the foundation and the rules of law that prevailed in this country.
And in climate change related news, Senate by a vote of 52 to 42 reverses Trump climate changing methane emission policies and restores it to Obama era policy. This is one of the more than 100 climate regulations dismantled by Trump. Now the Democrats are undoing that. So this flip-flopping of policies where one party will do one thing and the other party will undo it isn't like, you're going forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. How does it affect the country, sir?
One way. They keep saying, even yesterday in Biden's speech, our competition is with China. We got to compete with China. And the only way we compete with China is to trickle feed effect from bottoms up and doing all these things that he is talking about. No, sir. You go forward, you go backward. You go forward, you go backward. In the process, China is advancing its journey while we are spending time dismantling the policies and allocating precious capital to activities which is not advancing, not only advancing the welfare of the people in a sustainable manner, but it is also competitively disadvantaging us in the advancement of some of the main thematic items, such as what he alluded to: 5G, AI, electronic vehicles, etc. You are so distracted with your focus around entanglement of the policy differences, you are missing the bus on many elements, including security.
And President's controversial choice of Colin Kahl for Pentagon policy post has been confirmed with Republican absence. So the Republicans weren't even present at the time the vote was taken, sir.
Well, because the filibuster rule is in place, and they recognize that what's the point? Because we have made, remember this, the Senate committee initially declined him. And then his candidature was put up back again, and he made his case. This is one of the Obama administration officials who is the author of the Iran policy, and coming to lifting the sanctions and forming the framework for what they call as the Iran nuclear policy. So he's going to be front center and the middle of this, and we'll talk about it. I think now US is contemplating reducing even further the constraints, and make sure that Iran is brought back to the table on sanctions and lifting of sanctions.
And in global news, I'm actually going to refer to Iran-related news. The United States warship fires warning shots on 3 Iranian vessels, and they come within 68 yards. And the United States eyes major rollback in Iran sanctions to revive Iran nuke deal. And US-Israel formed joint group focused on Iranian missiles and UAV. Sir, all these things put together, I'm a little confused. US is also talking to Israel to try and limit Iran. On the other side, they are also watering down the sanctions. What is really going on, sir? Can you please make some sense for us on this?
I don't believe I can make any sense out of this, which is namely, on one side, you have had these leakages of information from John Kerry which he has denied. On the second side, you have this skirmish. This is the second skirmish that it has happened, which is, if you recall, we talked about an unwarranted maneuver done by an Iranian vessel in front of, despite warning shots. Now you have the three Iranian vessels coming within 68 yards. So on one side, they have this discussion going on to reduce, roll back Iranian sanctions to revive nuke deal. And then you have another force set up with Israel, which is focused on Iranian missiles and unmanned armed vehicles, which are flying in the sky, which keeps popping towards Israel. The last incident was the misfire from one of the Syrian locations by the Iranian rebels or Iranian supporters or so and so. So you're beginning to find some anomalies in the policy. There seems to be 2 or 3 different groups within the Biden administration focused on running the policies. We don't know who are these. Is Antony Blinken is running one group? Is national security running another group? That is one is foreign policy, which is under the Secretary of State, and then you have national security. Then you may be having special advisors who are promulgating the policy. So it looks like some 2 or 3 different groups, and that's why you're seeing the confusion. So one thing, I apologize. It is Biden to name Rahm Emanuel as ambassador to Japan, not to Iran. My apologies. Yeah.
So, viewers, we have been hinting for a while now that it is not Mr. Biden who's running the country right now, it is somebody else. This is going to become more and more apparent when you see appointments of this kind. You have to go back and see who Mr. Emanuel is associated with. And that is the person who is really running this country. God save America, because I think that this is, we have no right to call ourselves as a democracy when you have somebody else, puppeteering the whole thing from outside the White House. This is really a disaster. This is a disgrace to democracy. I'm sorry I have to go on a rant, but let's go on to the next item, which is Hong Kong, sir. You can add your thoughts to this, and then I'll go to Hong Kong.
No, I think you have been very forthright in making the observation. All the anecdotal data seems to point. We have seen Mr. President Obama, even participating and what you call ranting up the support as to why certain agenda needs to be pursued. And when you look at the administration that is coming in, every member is X. It doesn't matter in one policy. Yesterday, again, of healthcare policy, from healthcare policy to foreign policy to climate accord to Iran nuclear deal, every one of this seems to be somehow to retrofit and rationalize that the Obama policies were right, and so therefore, and you will follow. Be it on WHO, be it in United Nations, be it in World Bank, in any of these aspects, we are following blindly, and we're going to now throw trillions of dollars of money. As you rightly said, it is not a right approach in terms of what an elected administration should be doing in running a country.
And Hong Kong passes immigration bill raising alarm over exit bans. Hong Kong and Taiwan commemorate a peaceful protest that led to persecution of millions. Japan allows first starts on nuclear reactors older than 40 years. And Australia ups the defense spending bill to 580 million. All these are related to one country, Australia. Senate Uyghur inquiry crosses China's red line. So all these things are associated with China. What I'm amazed is even the Biden administration is amazingly silent about what is going on in Hong Kong.
Well, I think it has, let us all hope that they don't become silent on Taiwan. They have completely ignored the Himalayan region. The Himalayan region, the One Tibet policy, they've gone silent, which makes you feel that they are yielding to, in some manner, to the aspirations of the Chinese. So somehow, this Iran nuclear deal, because there's a lot of money that went in probably during the elections, we can name at least there are few groups which self-advocated itself. The whole thing the foreign policy seems to be around the Iran nuclear deal rather than on the ecosystem and the Tibet policy around the Himalayan kingdom, which has a significant impact to the world, the policies around East-South Asia and South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific. And suddenly they shifted their idea to take on Russians in the Baltic. And now President Biden is saying, I don't want to stir up things and I want to go back and negotiate with Putin. So the point that you're making is very valid. So when you look at the list of things that are going on, Hong Kong is now going to have, they have completely eliminated their democratic rights. They're moved into this exit ban, so they can stop anybody, at their whim, leaving the country if they find that they are anti-administration. And the Hong Kong and Taiwan, the peaceful is the Falun Gong communities who were all, leading, and they were persecuted, millions of them in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So you are beginning to see a set of actions where countries are taking up the ante by themselves in dealing with the issue rather than being reliant on United States.
I might want to add one little thing to what you just said, sir. Viewers, Falun Gong sect are Buddhist and they predominantly tend to be vegetarians, and their organs are harvested because the acceptors believe that these people lead healthy lives. China has objectified and they have exploited their own population, Uyghurs, Falun Gong anywhere, any which way they can. And this is a disgrace, and that they are doing all this in plain sight, and they are in complete disregard of international norms. Only now we are seeing some small noises being created, and they are coming and swatting it down like you would a mosquito. It's really, really sad. I don't know where these priorities are. I think this government is just as blind to some of these things as other governments. Very regrettable. But anyway, let's move on to Nigeria. Nigeria is urging the United States to move Africa headquarters to continent. Which continent are they referring to, sir?
African continent.
Where is it located now?
I think it's located. It's located in Middle East.
I see. And this is a significant news. Our neighbor, that is India's neighbor, Sri Lanka, bans all forms of face veil, citing national security concerns. Now, this is something that has been happening since that four church blast that took place a couple of years ago, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that they are the present Sri Lankan administration, very similar to France, is taking a very strong view, which is, there has to be homogeneous mechanism prevalent in the country in terms of social community entanglement and engagement and so on. Otherwise, it makes the law and order situation, potentially cumbersome.
And in global COVID update, Dr. Anthony Fauci says that India's Bharat Biotech Covaxin found to be neutralizing the 617 variant of COVID-19 virus. You will remember that 617 is the one that is causing this havoc right now in parts of Maharashtra, and it's also called as double mutant virus. And a nasal spray developed by Canadian Sanotize could be a game changer and looking for Indian distribution partners. The CDC says that fully vaccinated people can exercise, hold small gatherings, and without masks. This is the first time the CDC has come out with this, sir. Your thoughts?
I think my thought is that it is very refreshing to see three things. One is the Covaxin gets endorsement, so it's likely to spurt up interest, and it's very good for India, which is combating the this new virus, double mutant virus. As far as the nasal spray and the Pfizer announcement of the pill, that augurs extremely well. It brings it down to localization of the treatment and addressing the issue of the virus and spreading. As far as the gathering is concerned, the red states had already proven that, if you follow the social principles, you don't need to shut people down, and you don't need to have masks if you follow the basic sanity and hygiene, especially if you're vaccinated. Even after vaccination, double vaccination, if 6 in 6 million are affected, or if 10 in 1 million are affected, you cannot have 990,000 people or 999,000 people being subjected to a set of rules.
And in markets, Fed holds interest rates near zero, just like you predicted, sir, and sees faster growth and a higher inflation. When do you think these two will become a concern?
It's coming. By end of the year, we can see we are on a faster growth. The market correction still leaves us on a this year, United States is expected to grow around, the number can be north of 6%. We started with 4.3, we went past 5, we are soon going past 6. We have already seen the inflation numbers. The only reason why the inflation numbers are not up is because food and the energy prices are not included in inflation. So therefore, I think we are beginning to see that 10-year rates is a good indication. When will we see some of these changes? We again talked about it yesterday. I think they plan to reduce this bond purchase program, which is originally 120 billion per month. It's already scaled down to 80. As they begin to tailor that program down, you can say, yes, I think the economy is beginning to now, cool down.
And in other earnings information, Facebook revenue rises 48%, driven by ad revenues. The earnings per share was $3.30. Revenue was 26.17 billion. And Ford revenues are up with chip shortages, manages EPS at 89 cents versus 21 in the previous quarter. and automotive revenue of 33.55 billion versus 32.23 billion. So we are going to have more computers on wheels, sir.
I think we are certainly going to have more computers on wheels. Ford has again demonstrated, if you go back in time, one of the first companies that came out of the 2008-2009 crisis, where the automotive industry was ravaged, at that point of time producing 14 million cars to about less than 9 million cars. That was a significant kind of, significant climb down in terms of manufacturing. The Ford has said that it has addressed the chip issue. It is back on managing it quite well. Very similar to Tesla. Tesla had record earnings. So to your point, yes, automobile on computers.
And Apple records another blowout quarter with sales up 54%, earnings per share of $1.40. Earnings is 89.58 billion. iPhone alone contributed to 47.94 billion with a gross margin of 42.5%. Qualcomm revenue rises 52% on smartphone demand. Earnings per share was $1.90 and the revenue was 7.93 billion. Sir, the other news are all the numbers that you can get. S&P was flat, Dow fell 160 points after Fed keeps the rates low. Now you can see that oil is again beginning to creep up. Oil ended at $63.75, Brent at $67. And I'll let you make a comment, sir, right after I cover the Bitcoin price. Bitcoin also creeping back up, 54,351. Coinbase at $298.27. So your thoughts on the overall direction in which the market is headed?
First is, I think, the revenue numbers. I mean, I stand corrected. It's computer on wheels rather than automobile on computer. So computer on wheels, as you rightly. But overall on the revenue, you can see that this is the new economy and this is the new world. And all these companies which are reporting earnings are reporting earnings based on the change in the disruptive transformative change that has occurred as part of the pandemic. One would expect the sales to have come down. No, everything has gone up. Now, with regard to the markets are flat. The 10-year and the 30 years, 30-year is still very, very attractive, 2.29%, but the 10-year is an indication that we are approaching towards the 2% and the inflation. As far as the Bitcoin is concerned, it went up by $2,000. And so we went from $52,000 yesterday to $54,000. And my observation around Bitcoin is that there is no scientific model, but there is money. And what could be the reason? Tesla reported $2.5 billion of its profits it's still holding on Bitcoin. So there is all these big companies which is reporting, the Bitcoin, the holdings in Bitcoin is doing favorable augmentative effect on the revenues. So generally, when you see such big names and big leaders making their pronouncement, even in earning numbers, you got to have some tailwind effect. And what you're seeing is some of the tailwind effect in the uptick of the numbers. In other words, emotion and sentiments is driving the valuation. Remember, we went to $48,000. We clawed our way back to 54, and we may continue to see little upward momentum as well. And if you're from, in India, some of these IPL cricketers have donated to the Prime Minister Fund or so-and-so by selling one Bitcoin. I sold my one Bitcoin and donated that money. So when you have Brett Lee making a statement, I have given 74 lakhs by selling one Bitcoin, then says, maybe, I need to have one Bitcoin or two Bitcoins. So these are all what I call the sentimental effects which drive. There is no scientific rational theory in the price determination. It's not a gold as yet. Gold has some intrinsic value. So this is much more an emotional commodity. I'm not talking about Bitcoin. I'm not talking about the whole underlying technology which makes a blockchain. I'm just simply talking about Bitcoin as a commodity.
And if Ben Bernanke were to have been, not Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan would have been asked this question, what are his thoughts about Bitcoin, he might have said, this is irrational exuberance. With that, we conclude this edition of our Daily Global Insights. Namaskar. Thanks for watching. Do subscribe. And Sridharji will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early as usual.
Namaskar. Thank you so much and have a wonderful Thursday.